G'day, guys, and welcome to Warrior by Design. We've got another epic guest on here. We've got Kieran on here, he's creating an epic life for himself, right? In short, he helps coaches and consultants to become free of anxiety and fear to enhance their mental performance, right? Getting to that place of being able to get the best out of themselves that they can. He also, he's been in the mental health space for over 3 years. He's co-founded an NFT investment company recently as well. And, he's focused, trying to find that balance between the line of mindfulness and neuroscience, which is pretty cool, dude. I want to find a bit more about what is this, this balance that you're trying to seek, and what's led you down that path.
Oh, thank you for the invite, brother. Thank you for having me on, and kia ora whānau to those Kiwis that might be listening. Hey, fam. Great to meet you guys. Kieran Headley here is the good lad over here, Benjamin, just announced. And what got me into exploring that, man? Of course, it's a bit of a story, as is all stories that lead to someone doing this kind of work. I had my own experiences with anxiety and depression, quite severe. I had suicidal tendencies and thoughts, never actions, just simply was consumed by the darkness of depression and anxiety for quite a while of my life, quite a big portion of my life, really. It was really only the last, and about 3 years ago, things started to shift. And then about 2 years ago, things really properly started to shift in my life, where I started to feel more joyful, more peaceful. And this was due to two main things coming into my life. One was a deeper understanding of mindfulness, because I'd always meditated, but I'd always limited myself with it, thinking that the Headspace app was all it was to meditation, right? Sit down for 10 minutes and do this body scan and breathe. But when I was in Bali, lived there for a year, I had the opportunity of studying under a Buddhist monk for a small amount of time. I've now done a 10-day silent retreat, a Vipassana course, which is it's a 2,600-year-old silent retreat course initiated by Buddha. And and then also I'm very fascinated by neuroscience. I'm currently doing an online course in medical neuroscience with Duke University as well. But I've also done my own research for the last 2-3 years. So understanding more about the brain, delving deeper into mindfulness meditation, and really understanding myself from a deeper layer than what I did before, which was before an intellectual thing, where I would look at myself on the surface level and judge myself based on that, rather than being able to actually connect with something that was much deeper than that intellectual layer. And that really enabled so much more freedom in my life, man. And here I am today, feeling so much more free than what I was, for sure, man. I mean, still there's bumps and bruises along the way, but I actually maneuver through them joyfully now, rather than from a place of suffering like I used to. So I can proudly say that, but also I can proudly say that I've been able to take, as I know you have, and as I know many of this amazing people have been able to take some of my deep, dark experiences and transform them, of course, into lessons for myself, and have been blessed enough to have other people in my life that I get the opportunity to present and share those lessons with too. So that's essentially a bit about me, man, a bit about how I got into where I'm at.
Yeah, I love that, mate. And definitely resonate on a lot of levels there, and with the experiences within my own life. And I suppose what was the key things for you, man, that allowed you to sort of transition from that darkness, or those darker aspects of depression and anxiety, and that I suppose that spiral of day-to-day living, to one of being able to create what you want in your life, and being able to, I suppose, show up in a way that allows you to not be overwhelmed or consumed?
Man, yeah. I mean, when I reflect on the times where I used to be overwhelmed and consumed, like there's many moments where I'll be sitting there after a meditation. I'll be thinking, am I allowed to swear on this? It's okay if I'm not.
Go for it, mate. Go for it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll be like, what the fuck? Just because of how shocked I am sometimes when I reflect on what it used to be like, shrouded in darkness. Like the analogy that I like to say it like is, or explain this with rather, is it felt always like swimming through a really stormy ocean with a weight pack on. Like I was just gasping for every single stroke. for breath constantly after every single stroke, because every stroke was just so difficult and so draining in energy. And I felt like this big weight was holding me down, and then constantly waves would come and crash over me, and it would just be suffocating. That's actually what it felt like. And I'm sure many people can relate to that analogy. So being in that darkness and being in that complete sense of clutteredness and feeling so lost all the time, trying to navigate the single life, wondering if I should even be here or not, if I'm even a fit for it. So I'd reflect on those and I'll just get teary eyes, because I'm just extremely grateful for where I am now, right?
Yeah.
And I say that because at the time I didn't think that someone in that space could possibly get out of it, right? But the reason why I say exactly that is because it really is so freaking possible. So I'm just saying that specifically for those that are listening that might be in that place. Now, the thing that really, or the things that really helped me to start to shift that was, one was I had a stronger reason to start shifting it. So of course, the pain in my life, that was a big reason for sure. But the second reason was I had a lot of suffering in my family, and I wanted to be able to do something about that. So depression and anxiety run strong in my family. And then the third thing that really, and the fourth thing that really stood out for me was, my friend took his life because of anxiety a few years ago. And that was a big, about 4 years ago now. And that was a big turning point for me, because I was very closed off about talking about how I was. I was in the fitness space at the time. I was, speaking about the body, about materialistic things, and really striving for that kind of life. And when my friend took his life, and man, the way that it's just crazy how quickly it happened, right? Although it wasn't obviously quick at the deeper layer, but on the surface layer it was. I just remember I was finally home from Australia. I was living in Oz at the time, in Melbourne. And I visited him for his birthday a few months earlier. And here I was finally back at home, living at home in Auckland. And I remember getting a text from him after I messaged him and asked him how he was. And he was like, honestly, things are pretty bad right now. And I'm like, okay, let's catch up, man. I didn't hear back from him after that message. And a week later, I got a phone call from a mutual friend, and he'd taken his life. And that for me was just, it was horrific, right? Like, of course, you can just imagine what that feels like. I'm sure there's many people that might have had that sort of thing happen in their life. And that was a big trigger for me to start to really be more open about what was going on in my life, because he didn't have anyone to resonate with. And nor was I really super open about what I was going through at the time. And I know that if he had some people in his life, or at least one person in his life that was more open and he could relate to more, that might have even saved him. So I carried guilt like that for a while because of that. But that was a good trigger for me too, to start to be more open and start to actually pursue more about what can I do in order to work on myself, but also to help the significant numbers that are here in New Zealand, which is just insane, and Australia, right? It's huge numbers, especially for young males, and males in general. So that reason was good enough to help me to start to go down the path of, okay, well, what can I do to start to actually work on this? Because initially I was just doing meditation, as I mentioned, it was just little 10-minute guided meditations. So the main things that stood out for me when I look at the overview of the last sort of 3 years where most of the change happened, one big factor was the allowing myself to be able to sit with, and it sounds almost dumb, it sounds silly. Most people think, no, just keep busy. But when I shifted from keeping busy when I was suffering to actually learning to sit with the suffering, and I mean sit with it not in terms of like sitting and playing a video game or watching anime. I love anime. Or watching a film or something like that, or back in the day it was pornography, right? So there was ways that I'd distract myself. And I was learning to actually, instead of distracting myself, instead of keeping busy, instead of running away, I'm just going to sit with this feeling. Because what if I can actually learn to come to a place where I don't react to this feeling so much? Because the place I was in and with myself was, I would get depressed about my depression. I would become anxious about anxiety, right? It's like I was getting anxious about, if I go do that, I'll get anxiety. So I get anxious about the anxiety, but then even if it came as well, the anxiety came, I'll get anxious because I'm feeling anxious. And I'd get stressed about the stress. I'll get angry if I felt anger, right? So it's crazy that these emotions would compound themselves. So what I learned in time was to be able to sit with certain emotions and become a little bit more okay with them being there. So what this, and the amazing thing is later on I learned that there was a beautiful neurological component that comes into play here for when one is able to come to a state where the body is more relaxed in a state of stress, overwhelm, anxiety, depression, sadness. And they're able to relax their body and actually release tension that builds up in the belly and the stomach and the chest and sternum, the throat. And you can release that tension, especially when you're sitting within closing your eyes and just breathing through it. The brain actually develops a better relationship with these feelings, and then creates a less of a stress reaction in the system. So ultimately, I was, without actually realizing it at the time, because this was what was taught to me in the Buddhist teachings that I was going through. And just a side note as well, not Buddhism in terms of the religion, but Buddhism in terms of the teaching. I'm not a Buddhist religious person, but yeah, it really helped. That I think was the biggest thing, honestly, that helped me, because from that place I could start to have more clarity about when sadness would come into my life, when anxiety would come into my life. I'd actually be able to understand why, rather than not knowing why and thinking, what's wrong with me? Why do I feel this way? And I actually started to, because the self-awareness would build within me because I was learning to sit with it. I was actually looking at the problem rather than looking away from it. I was actually going into that scary dark room, that we call the spare room, and that I would think that would have all these scary things in it, and I'd just turn on the lights, right? Rather than thinking it's just this dark, scary room the whole time. It's like, walking into that dark room and seeing a coil on the ground, thinking, holy shit, that's a snake, and closing the door and running away. That's what I did at all of my life with my feelings and with my thoughts. But when I finally opened the door and decided to turn on the lights and realized, oh, wait, that snake is actually, it's just a coil of rope. Wow, this whole time I thought it was that bad, but it really wasn't as bad as I thought. And every time I finally came to the truth of that, with the feelings, with the thoughts, with these things that I thought were so scary, as if my mind was reacting to it as if it was a genuine threat that would kill me, right? Because that's the sort of feeling I'd get, the sort of anxiety I'd get. But when I started to recognize that I was actually improving to my brain that actually it's not as unsafe as what I'm perceiving it. It sucks, it's shit, but it's not as unsafe as what I'm perceiving it. Then the level of tension I'll start feeling in those moments will start to dwindle. So man, I know there was really only one technique, but that for me was so prominent. And I'll just in a more simple format provide just two simple tools that have really served me for those that might be experiencing anxiety or depression. One is a breath technique taught by Dr. Andrew Huberman from Stanford University. He teaches a double inhale and exhale breath, which is in through the nose twice and then letting go. And by doing that just 3 to 6 times, you already feel a little bit lightheaded. But what's happening is there's a shift in carbon dioxide and oxygen, the carbon dioxide and oxygen balance in the system. And with that drastic shift, there can be as well a chemical shift in the brain, just quite radically. And also the level of oxygen increases in the brain. That can bring lightheadedness. But what that does is it helps the lungs to be able to exchange carbon dioxide and oxygen more easily.
Yeah.
When you do the double inhale, it's like when we get stressed, what happens is there's certain sacs within the lungs called alveoli. It's very interesting. And if you've got millions of these, right? Now, when you get stressed, these sacs collapse, right? And as they collapse, it inhibits the exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen from our blood to our lungs. And so we're retaining a lot of CO2 because CO2 helps us to take action. So it's great for stress action, but it's not great for when we want to actually release stress. So the double inhale reinflates these sacs and helps us to continue the exchange. That's why it's a very drastic and quick shift for people. So I use that a lot for when I've in the past felt anxious or stressed. And then PMR, which is progressive muscle relaxation, which is when you tense every muscle in the body for about 15 seconds and then release and do that about 2 or 3 rounds. That actually has shown in various studies as well, drops in cortisol, a stress hormone. So yeah, like those are just simple little techniques that have served me in difficult moments. But the main thing is just learning to be able to come to a place where I'm actually safe within a feeling or within a thought process.
Yeah, I love that, mate. And I've talked about some of that stuff, on my podcast as well. And there's so much wisdom and, sincerity in what you just shared, which is, it's so amazing because, yeah, it's an interesting thing in regards to, because there's a lot of opinions out in the world, right? There's a lot of opinions, a lot of things, and what's right for you is right for you, and what's not for someone, and so on and so forth, whatever. But what I found interesting is sometimes our relationship to emotion, right? And and I've spoken about it so many times, in the sense that, and I say it to my, I've got a son who's 17, and and I speak to my son, and I speak to whoever will listen, in the sense that anything we talk about this, anything in moderation, we talk about balance, we talk about all these type of things, right? Of not becoming overwhelmed or consumed by things, or attached to the point that we get addicted, and so on and so forth. And what we know about, there's, as you said, there's like the neurosciences and the chemicals and the stress response and all the other stuff that happens. I think that the basic knowledge that there's somewhat of an potential addiction to some of these feelings and understandings, and the way that they can potentially consume us, and the chemicals that go along with that within our own body. It's so important, because there are people that will challenge the idea that you don't have to feel like we currently know to feel, right? In such extremities, like we don't need to feel anger in its extreme, or sadness in its extreme, or anxiety, or all these things to survive, right? Now, even when we talk about the saber-toothed tiger, though the stress response allows us to potentially survive, right? There's all these talks about the saber-toothed tiger and blah, 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 back in the day, and we had to run from all the stuff, all the danger.
Yeah, totally.
But even in that moment, from what I know from from high performing situations, right, within the Special Forces training, getting consumed in it still can negate survival, right? Can negate, because if you're consumed by it, you're not necessarily observing what's around you. Now, while this may allow you to react quickly, or might allow you to, run or fight or flight or do all this sort of stuff, when there is another way to survive. And that's on the other end of having that awareness and knowing yourself on a deeper level, that allows you to have that heightened experience in one that's from a knowledge base versus a reaction, is, to me, an amazing place to be able to head towards, versus reacting.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Now, I love what you're saying about the feelings. And
yeah, I'd actually just love to point something out with that, because that's
please.
Exactly because that's exactly something that I really struggled with for so long, right, man. It's exactly that thought process, and I thought that I can manage my anxiety, I can manage my depression, that should be enough. But that key word, right, I was surviving, I wasn't really living, right? So although I was alive, I was surviving, I was really only half alive. And also it would affect massively my ability to grow my business. It affected massively my ability to expand my relationships and to go deeper into connections with my partner at the time. And it just affected me in so many ways, in a limited way, because what I was operating out of in a reactive way was my programming. So long as we're in a fight, flight, or freeze state, because we're reacting to life rather than responding to life, what it does, it triggers a small kind of little piece of brain. It's called the amygdala, which is the reason why it's called the amygdala is because it's shaped and it's the size of an almond, right? It's this tiny little piece of brain, and the occipital lobe in the back of the brain. The limbic system fires up when there is, of course, a perceived threat in life. And this perceived threat doesn't need to be, as you mentioned, right, the saber-toothed tiger. It can be the saber-toothed tiger of the mind, right? The scary thought, the scary emotion, the scary possible future scenario. and this amygdala fires up. Now, when that fires up, that signals the hypothalamus to fire up, which signals to the endocrine system to fire up, which is our essentially hormone system, right? So it's going to send signals to produce adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine in the brain, which is adrenaline in the brain. And so now we're wired up, right, and fueled by stress, essentially. And being fueled by stress in that state, what it's going to do is there are going to be certain groups of neurons that will fire in the brain that are associated with that stress. Now, those groups of neurons are associated with things that I've done in the past that have worked, right? Now, what the brain perceives as what's worked isn't what gives me happiness, isn't what helps my business grow, isn't what brings me more beautiful relationships, but it's what makes me survive the easiest. So the brain will always go for that. So if you just want to survive in your business, survive in your relationship, survive in life, right? That's great. But if you want to thrive, and this is what I really had to learn the hard way, because man, I got kicked up the ass and in the nuts quite a few times when I wouldn't listen to life, when it was, knocking on my door and like, hey buddy, come on, there's another way to this. There really is another way, like you said, and it's on the other side of that. And I mean, if there were two people standing in the middle of the field and they saw, a lion on the other side of the field, and it started running towards them, the person that reacted straight away, what would they do? They'd run, right? But the person that didn't react straight away and instead just paused for a second, looked around and saw a tree. Oh, I could climb that tree and get away from the freaking lion, right? Great, I'm going to do that. Because man, lions are, I'm assuming you're probably faster than a human. So pretty scared if you're just running. Depends on how much gain you have on it, right? Or how fast you are. But essentially that person that takes their time even if it's just for a moment, and they pause between what's called the stimulus and the response. So the stimulus is when the experience occurs where anxiety is fueled, like maybe their partner said something that they didn't like, or they're losing a client in business, or someone did something that triggered them. That moment that thing happens, before acting, just taking a split second, just taking a quick breath, and then asking myself, this action that I'm about to do, will this serve my long-term self, or will this serve my tomorrow me? And if that doesn't, then it's just asking the question, okay, what can I do now that will serve us tomorrow? Because most people, well, everyone really, when they fall into a stress response, it's always thinking about this moment, and it's not being able to perceive the outward picture of how this scenario will affect my long-term self and my tomorrow self. Like, okay, to make myself feel better right now, I need to argue with this person in front of me, right? I need to argue with my partner. I need to tell this person that's trying to leave my business that they're a terrible person, right? And that's going to come out of a reactionary place, obviously. It's not going to come from a conscious place, which will obviously lead to a greater possibility for tomorrow. So yeah, just to conclude that, man, I know for myself anyway, I don't know about those that are listening, but I know I create greater decisions in my life that produce greater outcomes in my life, when I learn to navigate situations more consciously, not because I'm avoiding them, because I don't want to feel an emotion, or I want to escape the emotion as quickly as possible by fighting with this person, or by telling this person's wrong, or by just pushing away an emotion and being numb about it, or keeping busy. But when I actually take a moment and actually understand the emotion, and actually understand why I feel that way, and what is the best next step to take, not out of programming, but out of what actually self-inquiring around what would best serve the situation, and taking steps from there. I know for myself, it's definitely always been more productive. So I'm really pleased you shared that, man, because I know there's a lot of natural resistance out there because of the societal concept of being a man, and needing to be, and of course woman as well, being a strong woman. It goes both ways, of course. So yeah, I love that point, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, you too, man. And I love the way I love your knowledge base behind it. And for myself personally, with my own experiences, just to touch a little bit more on what you were saying there from my personal experience, is, what for me it really became down to was, so, I've had many diagnoses over the years, PTSD being one of them, right? Now,
man, I can imagine.
Being reactive was like, it was almost, if I'm honest, it was almost like a badge of war. you know, and it was also something I accepted for many years, just it's who I am. You know, everyone else has to deal with it. Suck it up, princess. Like, you know, everyone else is like, you know, you're the problem, not me. Rah, 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 all those type of attitudes. But what allowed me to shift from that place of like, and it was a reaction. But what allowed me to shift that was when I, like yourself, I explored what I needed and I started learning things and understanding things about myself and so on and so forth, and finding the things I needed to be able to have that moment, that breathe and whatever. But when I got from the point of reaction to a microsecond before I reacted, or, you know, that 1 second, the 2 seconds, you know, the 3 seconds, you know, I believe, you know, that people say 3 seconds, but when I got to 5 seconds of before reaction, that then became,
that's a lot, man.
Yeah, that then became a choice, right? That like people say 3 seconds is a choice, which I think it is, but when you still got that fire in the belly and you still got all that emotion in you, 3 seconds isn't a long time, man. It sounds like,
yeah, but it feels like a long time in the moment, right? It feels like a year. Like,
yeah, it does. It does. If you're dwelling on it or you're excited or you want to do something, it is. But when you're in a reaction, it's not a long time, you know what I mean? And when you're reacting from emotion or fueled, all that stress response or some of that stuff that's triggering you, when I got to that point, you know, 3 to 5 seconds, I got to a point where I thought, you know what, you're choosing to act like this now. You're choosing to react like this now. Wow. You're choosing to have that response. Now, it still didn't feel like it. It still didn't feel like it was a choice at the time. But I got to a point where I started realizing to myself, well, that's what, like when I was truthful with myself, like you're just bullshitting yourself and you're bullshitting everyone else. Like when you got that much time, it's becoming a choice, right? And that's when that's the more that I'm able to sit in that 5 seconds or 3 to 5 seconds, I can actually start to, as you said, challenge what I know to be true about the experience or the moment, or challenge what I know to be true, and look at that person in the eyes. Usually the loved ones cop it the most. And you're looking them in the eyes and going, oh my God, I love this person. They love me. Are they really that evil? You know, are they really that evil? Are they really that?
So true.
Are they trying to kill me? Are they trying to ruin my life? Like, which is all those things that you feel right in the moment. Like you don't necessarily always think it that way, but it certainly experiences that way, that someone's trying to threaten your life or whatever. But I love, like what you were saying, is that guy who just paused for a second, like
just a second, even
just a second.
Like if they could pause for 5 seconds, frick, they'll like the amount of choices that are possible from there, right?
Exactly. And that's day-to-day life, right? We're not talking about the lion scenario. I don't know.
Oh no, I'm not gonna pause for 5 seconds. I'll be gone before I can do anything.
Yeah, mate, trust me, I wouldn't be pausing either. But even in that reaction, like even with my special forces training, things would happen in seconds, or like very microseconds. It'd be reaction, right? Muscle memory and so on and so forth, and training. But even in those moments, I remember from my training, you would be able to assess so friggin' much in a second.
Wow.
Like you're talking about, you know, walking in a door, you're assessing rooms, you're assessing light, you're assessing threat, you're assessing scenarios. You know, so many things could be processed in that that second, or in that even microseconds. That if we can actually get to 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, well, as you said, there's so much that can be created in that time, right? And so much choice that can be had. And that breath that you said is, you know, it's been like, I've done a lot of meditation as well, and you know, I haven't done Vipassana, but I've looked right into it, and it's something I'm keen on doing. And you know, meditation isn't for everyone, but you know what else is also meditation? Surfing, golf, bird watching, walking in nature, you know, just swimming, the ocean. You know, I have got my wind therapy on my bike, you know, my motorcycle, I call it wind therapy. I just go and ride, you know, like,
oh yes.
You know what I mean? Like, there's so many things we can do to be able to bring ourselves to that state of relaxation, right?
Totally.
One that's not governed by, as you said, the amygdala and the hippocampus and all the chemicals that goes along with it, nor one that's not governed by that, but it's actually a choice that we're making, and sometimes we can push ourselves in that moment on the motorcycle or surfing and, bring ourselves into that, in and out of that space of, that adrenaline, the chemicals and so on and so forth, depending on how hard you push it or you don't, or whatever you do, but it's choice.
Yeah. Oh man, so true. And you said such a key component there, which is the concept of bullshitting oneself, right? Like bullshitting myself into thinking that everything's okay when it's not. Bullshitting myself into thinking that I'm and this is what I did for a while, is I bullshitted myself into believing that like I was the nicest guy to everyone. But what that did is it shrouded the reality that there were certain things that I was doing out of insecurity, because the reason why I was in that mentality is because I needed to be Mr. Nice Guy because I wanted people to like me, right? So I was in a place previously where I was, a people pleaser big time. And that people pleaser mentality meant that I bullshitted myself a lot around, like I was always being nice to everyone. I wasn't being mean to my partner, who I was actually quite a little bit toxic to. And we created a bit of a toxic situation because of that. There's a little joke that goes along with it. And I kind of resonate with the joke, actually. So there was a bull and a pheasant grazing on a field. And the pheasant sees the bull, goes over to the bull and starts pecking at the bull, getting little ants and fleas and flies off it. And the bull starts talking to the pheasant, and the pheasant just suddenly bursts out and says, alas, there was a time when, you see that tree there, I could get to the top of the tree. But right now, I can't even get to the first branch. I'm too fat. And the bull says, well, you know something? If you eat a little bit of my dung every single day, I guarantee that you'll be able to get to the top within a fortnight. You'll get there. Heck, even the entire of the humanity is on it. Oh, the humanity's the pheasant's like, well, obviously if humanity's on it, I mean, frick, they're pretty crazy creatures. I might as well give it a try. So of course the pheasant goes and pecks away at the bull's dung for a little bit. And within 3 days, the pheasant makes the first branch. Couldn't believe it. It's working. And of course, within the fortnight, makes it all the way to the top of the tree. Could not believe it. The pheasant was absolutely flabbergasted. And the bull's like, see, told you so, from all the way on the ground. And then in the far distance, a farmer sees a pheasant sitting on the tree, gets off his rocking chair, pulls out a shotgun and kills it. Moral of the story is bullshit will get you to the top, but it won't keep you there.
How freaking true. And I love that, right? Yeah. And even if that farmer didn't shoot him off the top, there's usually something else that'll come along, right? That'll potentially that'll knock you back down to that, back to the bottom, and have to, the more that you sit in that bullshit and you're lying to yourself, and hence me living in PTSD and in that heavy stuff, that heavy, as you said, swimming through the mud, or that darkness and trying to take those breaths. I was bullshitting myself that was the safest place to be.
Man.
What?
So true, man.
Fuck. Seriously, I was in that scenario going, I wasn't saying this to myself, it's the safest place to be, but my body's telling me, and my chemicals and everything else is going, oh no, don't go anywhere else. Don't do anything else, mate.
Yeah.
If you do, it's going to be dangerous.
Oh man.
And all those chemicals.
So true, man.
Making that a fact and a reality, and mate, I think back and as you said, like that sigh and that tear, it just, if I could go back and just hug myself and go, dude,
oh man,
you're going to be safe. You know what I mean? You're going to be safe moving out of this. You're going to be, like I always say, what the frig is perfection, right? Your perfection, my perfection, their perfection, someone else's perfection. What is that? But the fact that, and you'll resonate with this, the fact that I don't want to kill myself is a fucking huge thing.
That's amazing, man.
You know what I mean?
Huge.
Yeah. It really is. And the fact that I can talk about it too, right? That's huge in itself as well. Like you mentioned before.
Massive.
Because I'd hide in my own bullshit with that too. I'd tell the world that I'm this big, tough, bikey, ex-special forces, yada, 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 all those beautiful stories out there. And in that space, all you want is a hug from mummy and to feel safe, right?
Man.
That's, you know,
so true,
you just want to feel safe.
So true, man. Yeah. And that's the thing is, right, when the pain of change is greater than the pain of staying the same, of course I'm not going to change, right? But that's a perceived pain of change. And it's because it's the perceived pain of staying the same. Like as you mentioned, I'm bullshitting myself that staying the same is not that bad. Of course, it's horrible. I mean, if I'm getting suicidal thoughts or I'm waking up every day and not wanting to get out of bed, that's a really strong sign that I'm going through something. That's definitely something that I want to start to look at and not start bullshitting myself that there isn't anything to look at. So really, once I start to get very aware and real with myself, and it's not making things up, right? It's just getting real with, okay, well, what is the biggest pain right now in my life? And being very real with it, not bullshitting myself, not covering it up, but just being very direct and real with myself. What is the biggest pain in my life right now? And once I start to feel that and recognize that, that's going to be, in a way, a fuel source to help move me forward. Because only when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change will I want to change. And will the brain actually be open and susceptible to that change as well? Because otherwise it's just going to circle back in a compulsive cycle back to where I was. I might make, and people will resonate with this, right? Make a little ground for a few days, feel good. And then all of a sudden we sabotage ourselves back to where we were and we don't know what's going on. How did I end up back here, right? And it's this crazy yo-yo effect, but it's just because A, I don't feel safe in that newfound experience. B, the pain of continuing doing what got me there is too much. I'd rather just go back to comfort because it's what I'm used to. It's what's comfortable. It's what's easy. And C, because again, the pain of staying the same was not as painful as continuing creating that change that I created. So fall back I do. And that's really the thing, right? And so firstly, recognizing how painful is my current situation. What is the biggest pain? Secondly, helping myself to recognize that the pain of change isn't actually as painful. And there's a few things one can do with that, but also thirdly and finally, creating a mental sense of security where I actually teach myself that newfound experience, I can live there and that is actually okay. And I'm also worthy of that experience. The amount of times I sabotage myself and I'd start to feel happy because it felt so unfamiliar and weird and odd, but I'm like, this is weird. After, a few hours of feeling it, or even a few minutes sometimes. I remember times where I'd drive in the car and a song would come on, right? And I'd be a little bit happy. I'm like, oh, that's nice. It feels good. And I'd question to myself, why am I happy? And I wouldn't be able to find a reason. And then all of a sudden I'll sabotage myself and I feel like crap all of a sudden by the end of the drive. And it's just crazy how often I did this and how common I know that this is with humans. So yeah, man, all too right there is how can I actually find a way of being safe in a new experience rather than finding a sense of perceived safety in this terrible pain that I'm in.
Yeah, and I love what you said there. Coming to that place of being okay, you don't need a reason to be happy.
Yeah.
Coming to that place of being okay, that it's okay just to be okay. It's okay just to be happy with, because there's sunshine, because there's wind, because there's flowers or birds or whatever it is for you. The smell of someone's cooking doesn't matter.
That'll make me happy, mate. That'll make me very happy. Always happy about cooking. That's just it, man. Like the amount of times that I didn't think it was okay to feel this, and like that's the thing, right? Like I didn't need a reason to be sad. So why the heck do I need a reason to be happy? Right. So, when I'm happy, why do I have to sabotage myself every time? And so it was catching that, learning to catch that and learning that when I was happy, rather than, this is an interesting thing as well, rather than getting excited about feeling happy, because this is a little shift that I had a wee while back and it really helped. When I feel happy, I'll get excited about the emotion. And this excitement, all right, that produces dopamine in the system. So dopamine is a compound of not just reward, but also motivation. So when I feel motivated to go to the cookie jar, right, that's dopamine. When I eat the cookie, that's also dopamine. So that's how we create an association of dopamine to the cookies, because I experienced dopamine when I ate it. So therefore I experience dopamine when I think about it, see it, smell it, anything. And that same thing as well occurs with happiness. So when I feel happy, I get excited about the happiness. I'm correlating a dopaminergic experience with happiness, which is great. But the problem is that when the dopamine dies, I suffer, right? So when if I think about cookies, but then I'm not allowed cookies because it's not in my diet, I suffer. When I want to be happy, but I can't be happy, I suffer not being happy. So I'm not just not happy, but now I'm suffering the not happiness. And that's a crazy cycle that I was getting into. So I'd feel happy, get excited about the happiness, like taking off on a rocket ship, but then the rocket will run out of fuel and come crashing down. And it would hurt like hell coming crashing down, right? So the shift was, okay, rather than making happiness a dopaminergic experience, which means dopamine fueled, what if I made it a more, this is just a science geek thing, but what if I made it a more serotonergic experience, meaning it's more serotonin fueled? Serotonin is a compound of calmness, and I have enough. So when happiness would come, I was practicing feeling grateful for the emotion rather than feeling excited about the emotion. And that was a shift, because when I started to feel grateful about happiness, like if I did have a beautiful experience, if I was outside and I actually enjoyed the sunlight and the grass and the bees and the bird sounds and all that sort of thing, and I just took a few deep breaths, I actually allowed myself to appreciate. If gratitude doesn't resonate with you, because I'm speaking to the general pop, because I know it didn't for me for a long time. I'm like, how do I feel grateful? People talk about this gratitude.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I'd change the word to appreciation or thankfulness. And as I changed the word, it would associate more strongly for me. So I'd be like, oh, actually, I appreciate the sunlight. Yeah, I do appreciate the warmth on my skin because of the sunlight. I'm very thankful for this feeling. I'm very thankful for the sounds of the birds, and I'm okay today. And then I'm up and I have energy to, right? Like shifting the word as well can definitely be very helpful when it comes to that sort of stuff. But yeah, when the emotion became more of a gratitude fueled experience rather than excited fueled experience, that created a greater sense of safety with the emotion as well. So these are little like sort of more subtle things that people can do that I know has definitely helped me. So it may serve someone, but yeah, that's of course not one of the big, most important tools, but it's definitely a fantastic shift.
Yeah, look, I think that's so important, right? Because the other key thing there is, like, in that moment that you recognize and you got excited, another thing we can potentially do in that moment is come to the realization, what am I doing? Oh, I'm listening to music.
Yeah.
What sort of music am I listening to?
True.
Oh, I like that music.
Yeah.
Let's fucking have more of it.
Slipknot. No. Yeah.
But that's it, eh? Like, you know, those moments you can sort of appreciate when you notice that you are happy. Well, what am I doing? What am I doing in this moment? What's happening right now? Okay. And bring some more of that into our environment, into our space, and into our, to be able to appreciate, to be able to be thankful for, you know. And then that, like me, mate, like, you know, I'm 40 years old and I've gotten to a place where I've got some, you know, finally living amongst the trees, right? Which it's just, wow. It's something close to me, right? And I wake up every morning, most mornings, I won't bullshit myself, most mornings.
Love that. Love that.
And I look out the window and I say, thank you. Oh. Now, someone might look at that as whatever, but I look out that, and even when I'm not going to do it, I'll catch myself and I'll allow myself to take in that moment, look out there, look at the trees, and truly appreciate, be thankful, and be grateful for being able to roll over and look at that, and not something else that wasn't doing me any favors. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's so beautiful, brother. So beautiful.
It's something so simple, right? Well, simple in the fact that it's not that hard to do if you're able to allow yourself to do it.
Yeah.
Or have something to do it for, right? And it's so powerful. Something so simple can be so powerful to start your day. And
oh man, Yeah, I mean, the way one starts the day is the way that a lot of the time the day will go. If I started my day from a state of reaction because I turn over, look at my phone, and I'm looking at the sports results, and they're not the way that I want them to. I'm looking at the news and something pops up that I don't like. I see a text that is not nice. I see an email that isn't good. I look on Instagram and I see other people living their life, and I'm in bed, just waking up and feeling groggy and maybe average. Of course, I'm going to starting my day like that. Of course, I'm going to have a reactive and low day. It's like, I mean, there's ways to shift that, of course, but if I'm not setting myself up for success in a more beautiful way, if I'm starting my day like that. So if one can start the day, even if just with a one step before doing that stuff, if one can find their form or version of meditation, fantastic. But even if it's just starting by saying thank you for something, that's a huge thing, man. Although there are many people, and I know for myself at one point, can't connect with that, right? So it might be, okay, well, how can I reframe it so that I can connect with it? And what I started using for myself when I was in a dark space where gratitude wouldn't be something I could connect with, I'll start using, instead of I am grateful for, I shifted to I could be grateful for. And this bypasses a lot of limitations in the mind, right? But it would be like, what could I be grateful for right now? What could I be thankful for right now? I could be thankful for the beautiful mountains outside with snow on it still, even though it's November. I could be grateful for the fact that it is warm, even though there is snow outside. I could be grateful for the fact that I'm surrounded by birds, and just these things that really starts to open things up. But when I'm asking myself, what am I grateful for? I'm not grateful for anything, right? So that's what the mentality I'll get stuck in. So that's I just wanted to offer that, because that's a very fantastic shift for those that are listening that might have resonated with what I said.
Yeah, brother, that's so powerful. And is there anything else you can share on that? Because that is so powerful in the sense of, again, we talk about these, like, as I said to you, like, I was very hesitant saying it was a simple thing to wake up and roll over and look, because I'm well aware that when I was in that too, I wasn't waking up looking at nothing. Like, I was waking up and taking a breath was an effort, right? So,
oh man.
But I think you're right.
Anything else? Yeah.
I think you're right in the sense, just potentially, what could or can I be, or is there anything, or we talk about there's gratitude journaling, and so all this other stuff that's out there, and as you said, like, that's great for someone who's got something to be grateful for, but for someone who doesn't want to be here and sees a world that there's nothing to be grateful for, I love that perspective. Could I be grateful for?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, what could I be? And also, I am learning to. So, for example, I'm learning to feel grateful for nature. I'm learning to feel grateful that I'm alive. I am learning to feel loved by my partner. And this is just a variation of what people are so big on these days, which is affirmations, right? And affirmations can be very dangerous when used wrong, because we can lie to ourselves and bullshit ourselves with them, right? So that's why I'm not a big fan of them usually. But at the same time, because firstly, lying to myself, not only am I limiting myself from actually changing my habits that's leading to me not feeling the way I want to, but also as well, I'm lying to myself in a sense where my brain's going to obviously call out my bullshit. And now I'm no longer believing in myself. So now when I say to myself, okay, I'm going to meditate for 10 minutes today, or I'm going to do some yoga, or I'm going to work out for half an hour today, my brain's like, no, you're not. Right? I don't believe you. Right? So I'm actually teaching my brain to think that I'm a liar, to not trust me. And that's not a good and healthy thing to get to, which is why I like to reframe affirmations to, if you don't connect with it anyway, if you connect with it, it's a different story. But if you don't, I could be grateful for. Right? Yeah. I am learning to feel loved by my partner. I am learning to feel like a confident person. Right? These are great affirmations to write down, or even to verbalize. Because there's a lot of science behind using those sorts of practices around shifting certain thought processes in the brain. But using things like that is a great way to bypass limitations that I might have set with myself around what I am allowed to feel and what I am allowed to have. Right? Because my mind's like, well, no, you're not worthy of being loved. What do you mean? Right? So instead of I am loved, no, I'm learning to. So my brain's like, yeah, I guess you are learning to. Okay. right? I can connect with that a bit easier. So that's those are great ways to bypass. But yeah, simple morning practice of thankfulness. Some great questions that one might ask. I'll just give 3 simple ones. Is what am I grateful / appreciating of or / thankful of, or what could I be? So you can just shift the am to could, right? What I am or I could be, whichever one fits and feels best. What I am grateful / thankful / appreciating of X, Y, Z. So maybe list two or three things there. That's one question. Second question is, what am I proud of, right? I am, or I could be proud of. I am proud of X, Y, Z, 2 or 3 things. And then a final thing might be, what am I excited about, right? I am excited about, or I could be excited about ABC, right? So those are 3 simple questions that one might want to maybe even start the day with if they're looking for a maybe simple morning practice to bring into their day. And it takes, all of 1 to 2 minutes.
Yeah, totally. I love that. And the other thing I suppose I want to touch a tiny bit on, if we can, just before,
Please.
aware of the time. We talk about bullshitting ourselves, but if I'm going to be completely honest and look right back to where I was in that really dark place, I was fucking bullshitting myself in the sense that saying I had nothing to be grateful for. What a load of fucking shit. Like, seriously, like, honestly, there was, and this is my personal experience, and I'm not talking for anyone else that's out there, but I was fucking bullshitting myself. Now, was there a loved one that I loved? I had children, so I was lucky enough, on all honesty, if I didn't have them, I don't know if I'd be here. But I was so fucking thankful for them. Now, would you have been able to, like, I suppose they were maybe the one thing that I could say, okay, I'm grateful for. And even then, that was a challenge at times. If they cried or they did this or they breathed the wrong way or whatever the scenario was there was still times where I challenged myself. But I look back at myself from where I am, from where I was, and I can tell myself I was fucking bullshitting myself. I had so much around me to be grateful for that I just was so fucking lying to myself because of the spiral I was in, the situation I was in, the bullshit I was telling myself to tell me that I had nothing to be grateful for. I didn't want to be here. I wasn't self-worthy, because that's all bullshitting ourselves. Let's be honest. Like, oh man, big time, man. Yeah. And I know I am very, very empathetic for those that are potentially going through this. And I please accept that there's no judgment in this. I'm talking out from my own personal experience. Yeah, but you resonate with it, right? Which is where the frustration is coming from. It's like, when I look back at my past self, I actually say this a lot as well, man, is I actually look at my old self, like, in my mind sometimes, and I just want to shake him, right? I actually want to grab him by the shoulders and be like, excuse the French, wake the fuck up. Because that's actually where I was, man. I was so closed off to the fact that I could actually live a beautiful life. It was possible. And I could actually find beauty in life. It was possible. I just couldn't believe it at the time. So I needed the shake, right? I needed the kick up the ass. So I'm glad that there were moments in my life that gave that to me. But if I had a person, that would have been so much better. So I love that you're saying that. Yeah. Thanks, brother. Is there anything else you want to share with the guys? Oh, open slather. Yeah. I guess last 2 things. Firstly, no matter how shit things might be right now, if you're listening to this and you're feeling that way, or a trouble, a difficulty in a relationship, a challenge in business, whatever that might be, man, whatever you're going through, every other thing that you've gone through at a certain point in time in your life, you have also thought that same thing of, holy fuck, what do I do now? Will this ever end? Right? So almost we fall into this infinite situation in our mind where we believe it's everlasting, this feeling, this thought, this problem, and there's no light to it, right? But how many times in your life have you been in that sort of situation where you've believed that and you've come on the other side? Because here you are, you're here, you're alive, you've obviously worked through it somehow. And yes, of course, here you are again in darkness. Yes, that's true. And you're still going to be able to, in whether it's 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months time, you're going to look back and you're going to recognize, wow, that time that I was in that, right?
You're going to be able to laugh about it at some stage, but yes, not right now, but there will be a time. So I say that because it's very easy to fall into hopelessness of that sort of infinite mentality of this is going to last forever. Is there any light? So you clearly have the tools and the capabilities of working through the shit that you're in right now. I just want to say that because I know that some people at that point in time, I know, including myself, in the past, need to hear that. And some great things to start, is to just simply change your state. And three main ways that I do that. One way is to move the body, just get up and move, right? Second way is to change my environment, because I associate my environment with my traumas and the shit that I'm experiencing in my life, right? So if I experienced a fight with my partner, in my home, I can associate my home with those sort of memories. So being in my home and trying to work through something is probably not a good idea. Go for a walk. That actually triggers dopamine, which is a more forward-thinking process, right? When you actually go walking, because there's things bypassing you in your peripheral, so triggers dopamine, forward movement. Gives you more clarity. Going to a waterfall. I'm a big waterfall fan. Climbing a mountain, right? Going for a hike, going for a walk, anything. A little jog. So these things will help change your environment so that when you come back, you've got a different perspective on the situation. It gives you greater clarity. And the third and final thing, which is actually one of my favorites, is doing some sort of what's called in the scientific community super oxygenating breath work, which is an example is Wim Hof, right? I don't know if you've heard of the Wim Hof method. So for those that don't know it, just give it a quick YouTube Wim Hof method and have a quick look into how it's done, and then try just do one or two rounds. Just start with one round. See how you feel. You'll feel a little bit lightheaded. Similar reaction to the double inhale and exhale, because you're changing your CO2 and oxygen levels very drastically. And what this is going to do is it's going to give you a lot of clarity. Sometimes for the first time in their life, sometimes some people will do that sort of method and be like, holy crap, it's like I'm not stuck in my mind for the first time in my life. And that's what was really empowering for me, because I felt the same when I did it. So doing things like that are really drastically state changing, to start with, is a great way to start before you need to even think about doing, any big, practices and using any special tools, meditating for a whole hour, these sorts of things seem impossible in those moments. So just start with changing your state and then come back to the challenge. Because if you try to figure out the challenge from your current state, if you're in darkness, you're only going to go in circles. So change your state first, then come back to the challenge, and I guarantee you'll find more light. So yeah, it was a couple more than two things, but
No, I love that. And, again, if you've got a couple more seconds, can you touch on, you spoke about, we call it, muscle relaxation and so forth and whatever. Can you touch a little bit on that as well? Because that's also, for the breath side of things, there might be people out there that, might have COPD or can't have, or have asthma or whatever. Right. They might be in a scenario, or even just don't resonate with it. And I think, when you're in that dark place, or potentially in that, that driven chemical cocktail of stress response, I think, as you said, the muscle relaxation can be quite pertinent and allow us to have a shift as well, which is amazing. And you can do it sitting at a desk or.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. So I love using this during conversations that are difficult, because it's very difficult to ask them to just be like, hey, hold on. I'm not going to do that in the middle of a conversation. I'm also not going to be like, oh, wait, I just need to go for a walk and I'll respond to you in a second, right? It just doesn't work that way. Well, I mean, you could try, but see what happens. So with the PMR technique, I love to use things that aren't in the person's sight if I'm in a conversation, or if I'm at the desk and people are around me or whatever. So I'll tense the muscles in my feet as tightly as I can. So I'll grip the floor. I'll tense my glutes and my thighs as tightly as I can, and my stomach. So now I'm not tensing my fists, right? I've actually had clients that have actually I've had one client that tensed his fist in front of his partner because he was doing the technique. I don't know what went through his head, but I think he just needed something really quickly. So he tensed his fist, and his partner saw him tensing his fist. And she was like, what are you doing? So don't do that. But use your feet, your thighs, glutes, and stomach. They're out of people's vision, and you can just do them at any point. Hold it for 15 seconds, tense as tightly as you can. You don't even need to change your facial expression. I'm actually doing it right now as I speak. Yeah. So there you go, right? It's like that easy, right? And then I can release it after I squeeze it as tightly as I can, and just release it with a slight exhale. The other person doesn't even know you did a thing. right? So doing that for 15-second increments has a great service, and you can still do essentially the but in a very subtle way, right? So I can do it in a very silent way if the other person's speaking while I'm waiting. So these are two methods you can do on the go in a situation. But yeah, the PMR is great because it brings down stress hormone in the system quite quickly. Cortisol specifically, I've looked at studies that have looked at cortisol, not so much the other chemicals. But and what this will do is it will at least bring a little bit more clarity to mind, so that the next step might be a little bit more progressive.
Yeah, love it. Thank you so much, and really enjoyed having you on today, brother.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for having me, man. It's an honor, man. I appreciate you for the invite. I really do.
No, I appreciate you coming on, mate, and sharing your wisdom. I've got a 3-stage final question, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
So it is, if you were to go back in time and spend 30 seconds with yourself, what wisdom would you share with yourself, your warrior within, to create a life by design? Also, what age would it be and why?
Oh, yeah, I love that. 17. So that was a really pinnacle moment in my life. That was probably the year, because I just spent the whole year in it. That was probably the darkest for me. I've had moments that were darker, but that was the darkest year. And I was so lost. That was when suicidal thoughts were the most intense. And what I would do, rather than what I would say, okay, I would say things as well, but I would actually shake him, because he was so closed off and so lost. And I'll be like, mate, it's actually a lot more okay than what you think it is. And you are going to be okay. And it's that reassurance, right? So of course, I'm sure anyone would say that if they were to go back to their past self in a tough time. But I guess the piece of wisdom I would pass on to them is probably that very first thing that I shared with you, which is rather than running away from your emotions, mate, because you can see where that's gotten you. It obviously hasn't worked, because I thought that was the solution. Try this meditation thing. Try this sitting with the emotion thing. And I know that's not for people listening, right? So that might not be for a lot of people that are listening, but for me, it's changed my life. So that's what I would honestly pass on to my younger self at 17. I mean, if I had started then with that, I would have bypassed like a whole nut, like I would have bypassed years of suffering, honestly, because it's been that much of a service for me. So that honestly would probably be, those would be the things that I'd pass on to myself. At the same time, I'm also, there's a part of me that also wouldn't, right, say anything, and would just be like, you've got this, mate. And then leave him to it, because the things that he's been through, myself has been through, is the reason why I have this knowledge and I have this understanding of anxiety and depression, is the reason why I learned what I learned, right? So yeah, in a real life situation, that's actually what would happen. But in a hypothetical situation, I'd go and say those things.
Yeah, no, look, I love that. And, you know, it's an interest to give you a bit of background on that. It's very interesting how people answer that specific question. And a lot of people do come to that, is where I'm at now, I wouldn't change a thing, right?
No.
The only thing I suppose people would, I suppose, how can I say this, entertain, is maybe expediting some of the things, you know, expediting some of the processes. Not about not having the experiences, not about not having the awareness or having those, you know, those things happen in our lives, but the potential of making it a little bit easier transition, or a little bit quicker transition, not having to necessarily sit in it for so long.
Totally, man. Totally. Yeah. Oh, one more thing I would probably say to my past self would be, buy CryptoPunks and board at yacht clubs. If anyone knows what NFTs are, that's I'll be a gazillionaire right now.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. 2017 and 2021, get on
it. Yeah, love that. How true, right? How true. Well, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate having you on, Kieran. And yeah, so much wisdom, so much value in that. And remember, guys, explore, create, and be.